I hope you're ready to get painting along. We have just a little angled kind of square shader brush. This is what I'm going to do the background with. And then I've got primary colors plus black and white, which is what I'm always using. I want you to have a piece of paper. A semi-thick piece of paper is best, but you could use just any piece of paper, totally fine. Just make sure it's something you could tear. And then, a cup of water, towels, all that good stuff. And I'll use a couple other different types of brushes throughout, maybe like a small round brush as well, or a medium round brush, something like that. So just get any kind of round brush. You have the flat brush and then some sort of round brush. And then what we're gonna do is paint our background color first. So don't worry about the other stuff yet. And for this, I'm gonna make like a light peach pink background. So I'm using that brush to make that light peach pink. I'm making some red with just a touch of yellow. And then I'm gonna pull in white. And I want it to be kind of light. So there's a lot of white and just a little touch of yellow, so it still looks more pinkish. And then a lot of white for a light sky. And then I'm going to start at the bottom and just go from side to side like this. Now, you could always use a bigger brush if you want to save your arm a little bit. You don't have to use the sizes that I use. But I'm just going to start at the top. You can always change your shade a little bit. I always kind of change it a little bit when I mix a new color. And then as I get down about a quarter of the way, I'm going to start to add more white. I want it to get a little lighter at the bottom. And I don't want it to be too thick either. Really don't want it too thick. Really, really thin at the bottom, or light at the bottom, because we were going to do our layering. And we want it to pretty much dry all the way before we layer so it doesn't get confusing with the paints, because we don't want the paint that we layer on top of this to necessarily mix with the background color. I just want it to lay on top of it. And then I'm just taking that all the way down. It should get really light at the bottom, almost white, but it still has a little bit of that peach color in it. And you can always do different colors too. All right, so now we have the background painted, and then I'm going to blow dry it to speed up the process, but you want it to be dry before we do the next effect. So make sure you get that done. All right. Once your background is dry, you're done with step one. Step two, we're going to go ahead and paint in our mountains. And to do that, we're going to make different shapes with our piece of paper. So what you're going to do is you're going to rip the paper. So I might rip it up like that, like make a little up rip, and then I'm going to rip down. And you can rip up again and then down. Try to just get some interesting little shapes, however you want to get it in there. And then maybe rip a few in that way. So like I'm just going to use this that made a shape, and then you can make some more. Notice how I'm just kind of ripping it. Just let it be random like that. And then you can kind of choose the ones you like, and you can always rip little pieces off to reshape it a little bit, like if you want it to look a little more pointy or whatever. So it's super fun to play around. And now notice how I have all these different things to choose from. So like, for example, I have this one right here. I'm going to use this for my first layer because I like it. But see how this kind of goes down kind of deep, so I might tear that a little bit. So you can adjust it. What I recommend is making sure that it looks interesting and that you like it. So notice how I'm just tearing some little things out. And then I'm gonna be like, all right, I like that. Now what I want to do is bring it like around the midpoint, like about halfway or maybe a little bit higher. So you don't want to go too low, but I'm placing it kind of a little above the center, but notice how this goes down to the center, but this goes a little higher. So somewhere in that middle to top middle point. And then you're going to clean your brush. I'm using the same paintbrush to do this part. And then I want to make sure it's nice and clean and dry. And then we're going to make a blue color. And I'm using the blue with just a little bit of red. So blue with a little bit of red gives you just a different shade of blue. And then I'm going to put white in it too, because I don't want it to be too dark on the back. We're going to make this our lightest shade. So I have a little bit of white mixed in. And then what I'm going to do is go and paint just like this, little brush strokes pulling down. So notice how I'm almost like dry brushing. You're pulling on the paper and then brushing down like that. And then what you can do is add more white to your brush or to your color. So notice how this is getting a little lighter. And then don't worry about this anymore, but you can go to the bottom of what you just did, just the paint part, and add a little bit of a light color at the base of the mountain shape. And this is just kind of abstract. We're not trying to make it look perfect or anything. And then you can release and be like, oh, okay, there's one of my mountain layers. And then I'm going to just be like, okay, I don't want to use that one for my next one, but I'll use a different one. So let's go ahead and get a different part of the shape that we did. So maybe I'll do this one. And notice how I ripped it a little bit. So, like, what do I want to do here? Maybe I'll go with this as my next level. Notice how I'm like strategically like, how do I want this to look? But you want it to go under your first layer. And then we want to make it a little bit darker. So I'm going to add more blue to my mix and more red back in so that it's a darker shade of blue than my back mountain. So see how that got a little darker right here? This is the other shade we used right in the middle. So this is a little darker. I want to go even a little darker, more red. A little darker. And then I'm good. We're going to use that. And then just make sure your paper reaches from side to side. And then you're going to pull down again. And just go all the way across. I'm just doing little vertical pulls. Just pull down a little bit, like a ½ inch or so. And then you can make it a little lighter at the base too. So maybe that goes back into the medium color, the top part of that, the top mountain. So just add a little white, excuse me, and make it a little lighter and just feather out the bottom just a little bit. Add in more white and then feathering it out. Leave the top part of that little thing darker. And then let's see what happens. Ooh, kind of fun. So they're all going to be a little different. You're going to have these different effects. But what's fun about this is you can always go in and change it. So like maybe you want this to be a little bit higher right here. You can go in and add more mountain. So maybe I wanted that shape to change a little bit. Make that one a little different. You can change it, just use it like a stencil. So cool. And I just got like a little bit smudged, but don't stress about that kind of stuff. It happens. Happens to me all the time. I just come in with a little bit of a wet towel and blot off the part that I don't want. And it's all good. So now we have 2 little layers to our mountains, and we're going to do a final layer. So let's get our last little shape. And you can even make a new one. So if I come to my paper and re-rip it, maybe I want these ones a little more like less jagged and more rolling. Then you can make it a little bit more like that. And then we'll go here, and that'll be our last layer, and we're gonna make it a little darker again. So this time, this is gonna be clean your brush, and I'm gonna do black and blue to make it even darker. So this is like the closest one, and it should be the darkest. And then you're gonna add the white and then use that to feather out the bottom. But this time we're gonna take it like all the way to the bottom of the canvas. See? There we go. So now you have a few different layers of mountains. And then what's fun is you can take like either a smaller brush or whatever. You can take anything you want or the same brush. I'll just use the same brush. Just make sure you clean it really good. So I'm cleaning my brush and then I'm drying it off. And then I'm going to go in and I'm going to bring this down a little more right here. So I'm going to add the white into my blue-red color, just like here. And I'm going to go in and bring my mountain down, my back mountain, pull it down that lighter color so that it goes closer to the top of the second mountain. And I can do that to this one too. Bring it a little closer. So you're leaving a little bit of the background showing, but not too much. And now we have these fun, like different mountain layers. The farthest one is the lightest, then the medium one, the middle one is like medium, and then the bottom one is the darkest. And that is so simple and fun to do. Now, once you have that in, we can take our round brush and use our black paint to add some branches. So maybe I have a branch coming out of the upper right. I'm just using the tip of the brush and I'm going to wiggle and release pressure as I get to the end of my brush stroke. So I'm going to push and then wiggle and pull. And I'm always using Princeton brushes. So if you ever want to invest in some brushes, I really love these. I'm just going to wiggle and pull, making some fun little branches. And again, my branches are always thicker at the base and then they get skinnier as they pull out. And just wiggle, using the pressure. Maybe I have like an even bigger one coming out more towards the center here. It's reaching across the space. You can make as many branches as you want. I just totally zone out here. So you can turn some music on, relax. This is just, step 3 here. We're not doing anything too crazy. And I'm trying to think, do I want to add another one? Like undecided. I think I want another one more. I'm gonna pull one out like right here. That will be just smaller. You're not seeing too much. Okay, maybe I'll add a little more, and we'll add like another branch here coming up. I really want to kind of fill this upper right hand corner with some fun, interesting, branchy brush strokes. Right. Now you can also take your finger and make like a little sun by just dipping it in the brush and just putting a little stamp and making a circle. It's a fun little addition. And then while we have the black, we can make some little birds in the sky. You don't have to, but it's kind of fun. So same thing, you know, you're just using the black on that same round brush. And then go in. Birds are easy because all you're either doing is an M or a V. And I'm just going to do 3 birds. So I'm going to pull them over on this side. So I'm going to start with a V shape first. So see, I can have M, the M, and then the V. So, and you can make them look, I'll do one more. You can make them look further away by doing some really small. And then the ones that are a little bigger. Let's make this one a little bigger. They look closer. So you can have some that look further, some that look closer. It's good to do a few different sizes. It just makes it look more interesting. And then that's like the 3rd step. We're going to move on to step 4. Okay, for step 4, we're going to start with a clean and dry brush. And I'm using that round brush. Just any round size brush you prefer. And then what I'm going to do is make some pink and pinkish little blossoms. So we're going to use red with just a little bit of white and even just a little bit of yellow, but it's still more red. So I just have a touch of yellow to give it a fiery red look. And then I'm going to blot at the tips of my branches, blot a little harder for a bigger blossom look, and then smaller for a smaller blossom look. So I like to do thicker at the base. So if I like, this is like the base and I'm putting it around that tree branch right here, maybe I'll do a little thicker there. And then as I come away from that space, I'll just barely touch and let those brush strokes get smaller. It adds just some interest to it. And this was really great too. So if your branches got a little weird and you don't like them, here you go. Now is your chance to make it go away. And I say there's no shame in that. And then we're just going to extend those, you know, to the tips over here. all the way to the left. And then some can be just like falling in the sky. Just maybe they're floating around. See, I kind of scattered them down below. They can be a little bit up in the sky, but I wouldn't go up too high with it. Let that left corner, kind of upper left corner, kind of be more about the birds and the sun, and then this side is more like the blossoms. And then we want to have 3 shades. So I'm going to add a little bit of white, maybe a little bit of yellow to create a lighter shade. I'm gonna go a little lighter. You want to make sure it's noticeable. I had to get a little more white in there. And then we'll go in and add some second coat, kind of little more dots or more dabs, just right on top of or next to the ones that exist already. And it kind of goes with the background color a little bit, which helps tone it down. So if you have any that look a little too harsh or clustery, this will help break it up a little bit and make it look a little softer against the sky. And then you can have them floating around too. So now that they're all placed, it's a little, this part's a little easier. And for those who want, you can also get a smaller brush. So I'm going to do a little bit with the smaller brush. Just to play. And then you can have some with just almost pure white. It's like really light. And that can float in on top of the mountains. And you can put it on top of the blossoms. It's just almost pure white, but there's just a little bit of that residual red on my brush. And then you can use that same color to add some highlights. So your final step, once you have the little bit of blossoms in there everywhere and you like feel like, oh, that's enough, I'm happy with where they're all at, you're gonna let it go. And then you're gonna move on to just adding some highlights to your branches. And then you can also do things like adding a second coat with your finger to the little sun, or adding any touch-ups you want. You can even touch up the tops of the mountains in the background if you want, whatever you want. But I'm going to use that light pink to do the branches. And I'm just going towards the top of the branches and putting a very soft little line towards the top. Or towards whichever side, like if it's going vertical like these ones, you're going to go to the side that's facing the sun. That's where the highlight will go, to wherever is closest to the sun. I'm just getting them on all the branches that are, big enough. Some of them might be a little too small to add a highlight to, so you could just leave them. You'll know when you get in there with the brush if you have space to do a highlight or not. And this also helps them make them look a little thinner if you need to do that. So some people have maybe some thicker lines. No judgment, just it's just okay. It's not like wrong. But you might want to go in there and make a highlight on it and it will help it look smaller. So you can always do that. And then you can also kind of tone them down. So if your highlight got a little too crazy, use black. And then you can also make a subtler highlight where you use a darker shade. So maybe I use like a darker pink shade, or you can even use a purple kind of shade. So if you use your red and your blue mixed together, that would make a purplish kind of shade, which could look good and more subtle than the white. So sometimes you can go in with a slightly more subtle highlight color that doesn't just look pure white, and you can add that, and that could help tone your highlight down. But if it got really crazy and you don't like it, you could always just use your black paint. I'm just using that kind of purple-ish color. My purple looks kind of great because I got a little bit of yellow mixed in, so that's what happens to purple when there's yellow and red and blue all together. But I don't not like it, so it's fine. And I'm not covering over the white all the way. I'm just going a little bit next to it and softening it with this darker shade. It's darker than the white, but it's lighter than the black. So it just makes it look more subtle and it adds a third shade. So I always say 3 shades is, it's like ideal. Anything less than that tends to look pretty flat and uninteresting. But as long as you get 3, it's going to be at least getting that 3-dimensionality going on. And it really boosts it up just by paying attention to that one little detail. Like all your elements should try to have 3 shades and then you're good. It's going to look a little bit more like it has more depth. And then again, you can just, you know, maybe you need to go back in with more highlights. You can always go back in and add a little bit more highlighting. Mine might be a little, I'm going to go in and do some really subtle broken highlights. Broken highlights just means like my line is not, I'm not going to make a fluid solid line. I'm just going to add some dabs in some parts and then let the line be broken. It's just something I like to do. It's kind of like part of my style. And the more you paint, the more you know like how you like things to look. And the more confidence you get in your ability to make those decisions and to just be like, you know what, I like the way that looks. That's what it's all about. It's all about cultivating that confidence to maintain your authenticity. And that's what art really invites us and allows us to do. Allows us to explore what we like, how we see things, and how to express that. And then the confidence to express it and share it. And then you're good. It's like a good, fun learning experience.